First window that we're going to look at today is the self window. When leading self, you commit to exploring identity. With the leadership of self, we focus on disrupting internalized racism and internalized racial superiority by compassionately working to raise self-awareness and cultivate inner well-being. This quote from Dr. Beverly Tatum really exemplifies what it means to focus on exploring identity and the importance of it. Our ongoing examination of who we are in our full humanity, embracing all of our identities, creates the possibility of building alliances that may ultimately free us all. When exploring identity at the 3As, with active learning and unlearning, we focus on disrupting internalized racism and racial superiority, and moving towards deeper understanding about your own identities and the need for healing. With intentional actions, we look at moving away from perfectionism and acting based on your biases, and instead focus on practicing curiosity and building self-care practices. And finally, at processes for accountability, we focus on stop the learning in isolation and remaining stuck as you're exploring, and to instead create spaces to share identity learnings and form accountability partnerships. On that note, here are the practices at the exploring identity practices at the 3As. As you can see, we've bolded a few, and so now I'm going to shift to talking about some examples that I employ in my own practice. First, when active learning and unlearning, I focus on interrogating whiteness and how I have both benefited from whiteness and how it's harmed me as well. For me, this looks like noticing and naming discomfort, the discomfort I feel when unpacking my white identity, while also exploring other aspects of who I am, like my woman and queer identities. During my exploration, I think through how my identities have impacted my experiences and biases. Next, with intentional actions, I focus on moving beyond guilt to action. Exploring my identity has frequently brought up feelings of guilt, but I focus on learning from those feelings, remaining curious, working through them, and remaining focused on how I can do better and show up in my work as an anti-racist. And finally, for processes for accountability practices, I focus on incorporating self-reflection into my schedule. And I also have joined white anti-racist affinity groups where I can share my learnings and hear from other folks as well to incorporate another level of accountability. So now we'd like to take some time and have everyone stop and reflect. When was the first time that you became aware of your racial identity? How old were you? How did you handle this information?